After giving birth, her parents forced her to give up the baby immediately. See why. Valentina was in the hospital seat guard. She had to work on the night shift. Suddenly, the alarms were triggered. She looked out the window and knew that there was no time to waste. The story that you will see in this article happened in Chile just a few months ago. In 1995, Valentina was just a teenager who barely crossed the last year of high school. At that time, she had fallen in love with a boy, but unfortunately, they separated. She went abroad with her family 2 months after finishing the relationship in the middle of the school year. She suspected that she was pregnant. She was very worried. She found herself in a situation that never thought to be. She did not know what to do. She didn't even know how to tell her parents. In fact, they were very strict, so the admission was not a good idea, but there was no way to hide something like that. Sooner or later, they were going to discover. Valentina's friend asked, "Are you sure that you are pregnant?" Valentina, "I don't know. I didn't do the test. I feel very strange to get a pregnancy test." A day later, her friend took her to do the test. Valentina prayed that it was all a false alarm and nothing else, but it was not. Her result tested positive. That day, she did not know if she was feeling happiness or sadness. On the way down the street of the city of Valdivia, she aimlessly cried, but suddenly she felt a fortress and said to herself, "I will have to face it and I will have this baby." Finally, she arrived home. Her mother was in the living room watching TV. New arrivals. "Where have you been? You should have come at 2 p.m., already it's at 7 p.m., her mom said. Valentina was crying. "But what happens?" her mom asked. "I'm pregnant." Valentina still remembers that her mother came up to her and gave her a slap and said, "Don't play with this, Valentina, you know I don't like bad taste jokes." She told her she wasn't joking. At that moment the door was opened by her father. "What happens here?" Her dad asked. "Your daughter says she's expecting a son." "What? But daughter, is what your mother says true?" "I didn't think this would happen," Dad said. Valentina still remembers how her parents got angry that day and told her that the best thing was to abort. "Tomorrow you will come with me, you are a disgrace to the family." These were the words heard by that 16-year-old girl. The next day, the mother woke Valentina up. It was early morning. They took a bus. "Mom, where are we going?" she asked, scared. She still remembers that it was a very ugly day. It rained and it was very cold. After 2 hours of travel, they came to a small town called Mom Lakes. "What are we doing here?" "Don't ask, you know. You're too young to be taking care of a son. You're going to end this one time." "I don't want to do that, please. Let's go or I promise you it's going to weigh you." They entered a house. There was a guy who apparently was Valentine's doctor. He was an older man. He sighed. "Don't afraid, I'm just going to examine you." He took us to a small office and the doctor said, "It's possible to start. It is possible, but there's something you should know. It is very dangerous to make an abortion. She is just a young lady. It is likely that at the time of aborting, she can become sterile, means she can never have children again. It is advisable to wait for her gives birth, then give your grandson up for adoption." "No, doctor, we do not believe that. Just do it," she also wants. Valentina, the teen, just crouched and the look was obvious that they were forcing her. The doctor just said, "I won't do it. Maybe if she used to have children, but she is just a teenager. I don't want to carry weight on my conscience. My opinion is to give him up for adoption." Finally, they came home. It was as if fate was in favor of Valentina, who felt very sad to know how her parents acted when they got home. The younger girl's parents told her, "You're going to have that baby, but then you'll have to give him up for adoption." Finally, the time passed. After 8 months and 2 weeks, Valentine gave birth to her baby. "Fortunately, everything went well. He is a beautiful baby," said the nurse. Valentina asked to see her son. She saw him but only for a moment. Her mother soon showed up and made her sign a paper in which she said that she has agreed to give up her baby. "I remember that my mom arrived with a paper. She told me to film it and I refused, but she told me if you don't do it, don't go into the house no more. Don't worry, he'll be fine." I didn't want to do it, but at the same time, I didn't want my son to suffer because of me, i.e. I thought it would be a better place for neither of us. I signed it and I could no longer see him. The only thing I remember was that mole on his skin that I also have. My mom took care of performing all the paperwork to separate me from my son, from his own grandson. Valentina went into a deep depression, and as much as she tried to do something to meet her son, she didn't even get it. She didn't even know where he was and she didn't have any information. Valentina still remembers that her father told her, "From now, things are going to change. If you make the same mistake you'll leave the house and we won't pay for the studies. You should mature and start from scratch. Your son will be fine. He should go on. You should be grateful as you're not going to be cleaning diapers and giving your only life to a bastard." And that's how time went on. Valentina learned to move on, started college and finished it with honors, even got a scholarship to study a master's degree. She had studied medicine, of course. There were many times when she thought about her son. She wondered if he would be fine, what he will be doing now, he will be close or will be far away. Sometimes she thought about looking for him but was afraid of what might happen. On many occasions, she was about to do it after finishing her career and get a job in a hospital of the capital. She married and had a daughter. She did not want her husband to know everything that had happened. They were a happy family, or at least that seemed. However, a day after a few years something happened. It was the winter of 2019. Valentina had come to the hospital to work as usual. It was 2 in the morning when suddenly she heard the phone ringing. An emergency patient came. We need you to come to the surgery room. That moment, Valentina looked out the window and felt something very strange. She saw how the paramedics carried someone injured. Was the first time she felt a very strong fear. Then she was running towards the place. There, they told her that someone had run over him and we must act immediately. At that instant, Valentina approached the young man, and just at that moment she saw him in a strange feeling. He became bigger. She felt that time was stopping, but it was gold, so she acted immediately. The boy had his bare chest where she saw a mole in her skin that seemed familiar, which she also had. He had a great resemblance to her father. Luckily, the young man resisted the operation, but he was still under observation. The doctors stayed with him for a while. Valentina was called to see another patient. Then she asked for the young man's name. She wanted to know more about him, and as incredible as it looked like the boy had her same surname, then inside the hospital computer where she discovered in the file that young man had visited the establishment before and that it was from an orphanage. Everything was really surprising for the woman. She certainly could not believe. Valentina remembers that moment as if it was yesterday. I went into the computer and looked for records about him and found many things. I was able to access other informations. I was shaking. It was clear that he was my son. He looked like my father. That mole in his skin. Also, he lived in an orphanage. As if fate had put he forward. I did not know if crying or laughing in front of my son, and did not want that he's here in the hospital in that condition. But if life gave me this chance, I'll know how to take advantage of it, I thought, and I would do everything to remedy the situation. I would apologize again and again for all the wrong thing I did. It took a little time to finish her shift. She wanted to see him again and be by his side. Then she went and back. A nurse has left there from the intensive care room where he was. She just told Valentina that the patient just passed away. He didn't resist. She could not believe. She opened the door and went in there. There were some colleagues with some resuscitation apparatus next to the door and only looked at how her son was lifeless. A doctor came up to her and told her, poor him, he did not resist. He was of an orphanage. He has no parents or brothers who will cry for him at that moment. Valentina was so badly and almost fainted, but she grabbed a table that was next to the door and heard those words. She saw him, who will cry for him. At that moment, they left her alone with that young man. She cried like never before, because that young man was her son. Valentina said, it turned out that he was celebrating his graduation from college, had taken over, and apparently, did not realize the car coming on the other side. I also knew that my suspicions were true. He lived until he was 18 years old in a hostel in the north of the country. Then he came to the capital to study in the university. He was a good guy, he had good grades, but his life ended such once. If I hadn't given him up for adoption, maybe he would have been happier, and he wouldn't have been through this. Died at 24 years. Since that happened, I didn't talk to my parents. In fact, I always felt resentful for them. They are very old currently, but I can't see them again, and I don't know if I do well. But they took away part of my life. They took away my illusion of being a mother when I had to do it. I felt guilty. Who knows the times he needed me? Who knows the times he cried and wondered why I abandoned him? Maybe he wanted to look for me. We had the same last name. It was easy to find him, but I didn't. And now there's no reverse. There's no time machine to go back to the past and tell him how much I love him. His life ended as well as the mine, although I have a daughter and a husband, but I feel very guilty. And that's how Valentina ended her story, a story that could have had another course, another end, or maybe a better one. Certainly sometimes life gives us surprises at the most unexpected time. Today many parents punish their children when they make mistakes, and that's wrong. They should not be punished because they are human, and many times. At that moment, all what the parents should have done from the beginning was to support her, because now, they not only managed to keep their grandson away but also their daughter.